good afternoon to the evening safari here at Wild Earth, and you are having a look at the elephant sump that is at Treehouse Dam with 2 turtleneck doves that are added. And that, believe it or not, has been dug by elephants. And right down onto the water table, there's a seep inside there with some water that's busy coming up from underground, from the water that's lying actually in this drainage line, but subterranean. And the elephants have smelt it. But have a look at Tebs coming out of the screen, or out of the shot. You'll notice how deep that actually lies underneath the level. There we go. There's the level. It's probably about, I would say, 2 meters or so underneath the ground level at the moment, and that'll give you a good indication of where the water table is. There's a good water table here. We've had a couple of years of very good rain, and what's happened is now it's just a little bit dry on the surface, but there's still some water underneath there. And can you believe the elephant have smelt that and have dug down at the bottom of that sand, and now we've got a whole bunch of birds that have come in. Now, you may not notice it just from the 2 turtleneck doves that are there, but there's almost in every single tree that's surrounding us at the moment, we've got some birds. And what I'm hoping is that some of them actually come down here and come for a drink in that water. Let's see, there you got a good view of Treehouse Dam. And while I'm actually parked next to one of these bird corridors. And what a bird corridor is exactly that. It's a corridor that birds will use to approach open water. Birds get preyed on by other little birds, little falcons and little goshawks, and they'll be quite wary of approaching water in the open. Only your bolder birds like drongos and hornbills and doves will do that. But all the shyer birds, and for me at least, all the birds with the best colors, always tend to be in one of these corridors, and that's exactly what I've done. I've gone to park next to one of these corridors, and I'm hoping that approach while we're sitting over here, at least 1 or 2 of these little specials that might be in the area. I can hear a chin spot batis, and I can hear some sunbirds, but that's about it. I can't hear these turtleneck doves. Have a look there. Let's see if he or she goes in there. There we go. There he goes and disappears. It's not much deeper than that, than what you see. You can see the head up, head down. His head's down. He's drinking now. He'll stick his head up in a second, keeping a wary eye on the sky. And of course, just because I've said that, he's not going to do it. We'll see what he does now in a second. Still not sticking his head up. Of course, for those of you who know me, Stefan Winterboer, exactly what I say is exactly the opposite of what happens out here in the bush, and it is one of those things. I don't want to jinx anything, but have a look at the sky. For those of you who have been following us for a while now, have a look at this sky that we've got growing above us. Doesn't it make you excited? I'm not going to say anything about what this looks like, but as you can see, it's grown a bit thicker from when we were busy with it this morning. And when I look north and when I look south, unfortunately south, where most of it comes from, is still looking a bit open, but definitely north from us, it's looking a bit thicker. And what I'm hoping for is that it's coming out of the Mozambique Channel and will bunch up against the Drakensberg Mountains. And as it bunches up and lifts, it starts to release that precious stuff that we are yearning for so greatly out here. This afternoon, I have got Tebs on the back with me, and we've got Jerry and Kirsten in final control. Sorry, I got ambushed there by Tebs while I was busy digging out one of these Mopani flies that we have flying around here. It was getting into my eye for the moisture there. But for those of you who don't know me, I am Stefan Winterboer, and I'm not a very common face at Wild Earth. I tend to be behind the scenes a lot more than I am in front of the camera. But nonetheless, I enjoy being in the driving seat, for lack of a better description for you. And I'm glad to be hosting this afternoon, or the Sunset Safari, with you. Now, I'm hearing some birds coming through on our... Nope, they're not coming through on our left-hand side. We've still got those two chin spot batters that are busy lurking in the bushes to the side of us. And there you can see, I'm hoping that they come into this tree that Tebs is showing you now. It's right on the edge of this corridor, this access onto the seep. But so far they are managing to just stick at the outskirts and are definitely not coming into the open as I hoped that they would. For those of you following our drought story with interest, firstly, I'd like to say thank you for all your nice comments that came through this afternoon while we were off air, because as you would have noticed on the Djuma Dam Cam, we've been fixing Pete's pan or Pete's pond, and we've been putting some water in it. As far as I know, I don't know if it was fixed completely today, but I definitely know that Jim Reeves, the master of the maintenance crew out here, was busy getting that all fixed today, and hopefully you kept a beady eye on him and Pete. When I walked past there early this morning, Pete was already ensconced in his mud, and I'm sure he will be happy to have all that space to himself again with a little bit more water. Now, while I'm busy keeping my eye open for anything coming up through this corridor, Jack from YouTube wanted to know how the elephants managed to dig that seep. Well, Jack, it's a combination of digging with their feet, their toenails on their feet, and then using the tip of their trunk, which is very sensitive, very dexterous, but also is amazingly capable of digging that. And so what he would have done is they would suck up and blow the water into this area, into this cavity, and in so doing they would actually almost plaster it, which makes it a little bit waterproof, and they'd go down into the damp sand, and as they start getting into the water table, the water will start seeping into this cavity, and they will carry on doing it. Every time they come through here, they'll carry on adding this layer of wet plaster, and also all the clay that sloughs off of them when they're busy having a bath sort of waterproofs this little pan as well. So it's a combination of a lot of things, and it definitely can dry up. They can dry up a seep locally. It doesn't mean that there's no water in the seep, but just like a borehole, it can actually dry up. Now, Tebs, there's in this tree, there we go, that little bird over there that you're looking at is exactly the bird that was calling at us now. So for those of you, let's see if we can get him. That is a chin spot batis. Now, it might have been a bit disconcerting, that jump that you saw there, but that is the super zoom of this camera coming to effect. And let's see. There we go. They always hang around in pairs with one another. Believe it or not, the little bird that you're looking at now, 17 years ago when I started guiding, was the first bird call that I learnt in my new job as a guide. So we always used to call it the three blind mice bird, and it's because the call sounds like they're saying that. Now, Tebs, if you come across a little bit to your left, there we go, and then punch in there, you'll see that the other one of the pair is in the middle of the tree there somewhere. I didn't want to get too close, but it looks like I've actually... There you go. You can see him flitting, or her flitting around outside there on the right-hand side. Grey back, white belly. Might have to go right a bit, Tebs. No. We're battling to show it to you. It's such a tiny bird. They're literally just 2 inches tall, and we probably parked about 90 feet, 100 feet away. So it's going to be a bit difficult for Tebs to show you. He's doing a heroic effort anyway. But that is one of the birds that we wanted to show you. I'm now busy. There they fly across the drainage line, not going in to drink, as I predicted that they would. Of course, I mean, that is exactly what is going to happen. So there's a breeding herd of elephant that have just arrived at Jumapan, and we're quickly going to link to Jamie, and then we're going to hopefully show them to you. Catch you in a little while.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. It is wonderful to be out and about on this sunset safari. Hope you've been enjoying the wondrous time with Steph. It is so good to have him back out and presenting again, albeit for a fairly short space of time. So I'm sure you're all enjoying having him back in the driver's seat. Brian and myself were distracted by alarm calls. I was on my way to Arathusa to see what was happening there. There was a squirrel shouting in a tree. I couldn't find the squirrel, so I still have no idea to this point what it was so very upset about. I think it was probably a bird or a snake or a mongoose, something along those lines. And the reason I say that is I did several loops to triple check that area. Lots of impala and inyala and kudu, all things with fairly good eyesight. And if it were something larger like a leopard, there would be alarm calling as well. So I think it was a squirrel very cross with something smaller than that. Always useful to keep an eye on the various little animals of the bush and keep an ear out for their calls. But also at the same time remember that for them there are a lot of threats out there that we wouldn't necessarily consider a threat to some of the larger animals. This morning, if you missed the sunrise safari, there was an update that the wild dogs had crossed into Boyatela sometime last night. For the life of me, I did not manage to find any tracks. None of the other guides have managed to find any tracks. So we think that maybe that update got slightly confused, maybe from someone who's not all that familiar with the properties, and made a slight mistake as to where the wild dogs disappeared, because the guides then reported that the wild dogs had crossed towards Londolozi. So it looks as though the investing pack had gone south for now. You never know, on a cloudy day like today, everything is moving around throughout the day. It's a good chance that they haven't gone flat and spent the day lying down. The same goes for leopards as well. Predators will have been moving throughout the day. I'm starting to feel a little bit like the clouds brought false hope. Brian's just giving you a view of the clouds that have been hanging over our heads, bringing the temperatures down wonderfully for us. Nice, it's still a warm afternoon, but considering the temperatures we've had, it's nice to be cool again. Unfortunately, no sign of any kind of drizzle, and the clouds seem to get higher and higher, taking that chance of rain further and further away. While we continue on our search for wonderful things to show you, Jabba the Hutt, you were saying that you noticed that we call sightings in on the radio, and you were wondering if there are GPS trackers on our vehicles that keep track of where the animal sightings are. And it's a combination of things. First of all, yes, we always do. It's useful to have a level of cooperation between guides. That way everybody gets a chance to see pretty much everything. Sorry, I feel as though there might be a sneaky buffalo thorn stuck somewhere in my seat. Every now and again I get just a gentle poke around the ribs, but I can't feel it. In my shirt as well. So we always call in the position of the animals, and it's a useful way of ensuring cooperation from all of the safari guides, and it's also much easier to find something. If you have somebody that you can say, the tracks look like they're going towards this dam, why don't you go and look there and I'll track from here? You always get a degree of cooperation. And then yes, we do have GPS trackers on our vehicles, so that we can mostly keep track of places where the vehicle signal might drop or dip. And that's a really useful way so that we can constantly work on and make sure that our technology is functioning at the highest standard. That being said, we also record the positions of certain animals, and that information gets sent across to Panthera. Panthera is a very large scientific organization that deals mostly with research into big cats, but also monitors other endangered species. So for wild dogs, cheetah, leopards and lions, and brown hornbills, we always get the ladies in FC to record their position, how many animals there were, what sex they are, and where exactly they are. And slowly with that information, Panthera can start really interesting maps about the territorial movements of the animals out here. It does provide you with some really interesting information, and what they've got from that over the years. An example is the fact that Karula, the famous queen of Djuma, the leopardess, in her home range is central around Djuna, she has the largest territory of any leopard within the Sabi Sands. And there's a couple of reasons behind that. One is that she's been incredibly successful, of course. The other is that she is in the northern section of the Sabi Sands, which the territories of the leopards up here tend to be much larger than the prime territories around the river systems further south, so towards the Sand River, for example. But that's the kind of use that you can actually put that information to, or what you can use it for. I've said, though, that it would be fascinating if we could monitor Karula, for example, Karula, or Tingana, or both. Monitor their positions, get something that sends out a GPS alert every, let's say, 4 times a day, and really plot her movements and see if there's actually a pattern to the way that she moves. That being said, although that sort of research goes on, there's no real necessity to disturb Karula to have to put a collar on with a GPS transmitter. I'm just thinking how interesting it would be if we had a way of being able to chart, even when we don't see her necessarily, to just chart her progress and see if she or if Tingana walk, if we can distinguish any kind of patterns in the way that they walk. To a certain extent, we do that through degrees of observation anyway. I'm going to continue on to Arathusa. Steph has got some wonderful elephants to show you.
And what a surprise we have for you here. 2 herds of elephant around the brand newly repaired pond of Pete here in front of Vuyatela. And you can see, have a look at the way that one group of elephant have just finished drinking. The other group of elephant have just come in. The group that you're watching now is the group that was here. And have a look at the ones on the far left-hand side of your screen. Those are the ones that have just arrived, and you can see them scooping up just the top layer of water with their trunks. Now, although these elephant are 2 different family groups, they all tolerate each other at water, especially scarce water like this is. As long as the one group of elephant announces their presence. Now let's see what happens over here. That's the one group, the one on the left-hand side, and the other group is the one on the right-hand side over here. And stuck in the middle is a buffalo, looking quite nervous, to be quite honest with you. And obviously Pete the hippo, which is just lying dead still, and rightly so. I think he's trying his best to imitate a rock at the moment. Now let's see what these Ellies go and do. It's always interesting with elephant. They're such highly social animals. It's actually quite difficult to predict what they're going to be doing. Highly social and highly intelligent. Have a look at them, just scooping up the water. on Twitter has noticed that these elephants are coming running in at this newly repaired pan and wanted to know how quickly will word get out into the bush that, oh, look at this little baby that's just appeared out of the middle of nowhere. Paul, I'll get back to your question in a second. So now have a look. Look at that little guy. No more than a few weeks old. In amongst all these tree trunks of legs around him. And have a look at how careful the rest of the elephant will be with him. And buffalo's just been chased out of the water. Stumps are being thrown around. And that little guy is just staying right next to his mother. Right there. So to come back to your question, everyone already know that this pan is being pumped. The reason for that is that this pan is pumped from a borehole that is run by an old listed diesel engine. And these animals are clever enough to know that when that pump is running, it means water in this pan. And what they'd come and do is they'd actually be able to hear it pumping from quite a distance away. The throb of that diesel engine is noticeable even to our ears from quite a few kilometers away. And they would also know that this is a very good source of water in the dry times. The old dams, as they refer to in all the books, will absolutely know that when they need to have water, that these pans are pumped and they will come in and bring their families. These elephants are still all in pretty good condition. Have a look at that baby being jostled inside there. Got a bit of trumpeting going on over here. It's not at us, don't worry. Kicking up some dust. There's obviously a bit of competition for the water at the moment between the two different elephant herds. Got nothing to do with us. And now the one herd with a baby has just swapped from the one side of the pool with mud in it to the other side of the pool where the water is bubbling out of the inlet pipe. Elephant, where they can, will absolutely drink clean water. Testimony was what we were looking at just a few minutes ago when they were digging in Treehouse Pan. That water is being filtered by the sand and is a lot cleaner than water even in this dam. But where they can, the water that they drink, they'll try and get from the inlet pipe. And this dam has been so freshly repaired that the water that you're having a look at drinking over there is relatively untouched. Have a look at this baby elephant. It's tiny. He's so cute. Still got baggy skin. Have a look at that. Teb's punching right in there. Gee whiz. Even he looks in pretty good condition. Well, she looks, I'm not too sure what sex it is. It looks like a he. Pretty good condition, considering everything. Now, how you tell elephants in bad condition, you have a look at their spines, and in particular their hip bones, which lie. You're having a look at that elephant in the center of your screen. No real noticeable hip bones sticking out there. Their shoulder blades, you can't really see them. These ellies are in good condition. It is very dry. There's not a lot of grass around. I think if the drought goes on for too long, we're going to start seeing elephant lose condition. That's an old cow you can see on the right-hand side of your screen, and you can see how she's lost some of her condition. You can see that her temples are quite sunken in, but her ears are not hanging yet, and even though her shoulder blades are sticking out a little bit, there's still a lot of tone in her muscles. So all in all, not one of these elephants is looking in bad shape at all. I think that little guy can get a little bit more milk, but then I'm always one for feeding babies more milk. And Michael has noticed that Pete is a solitary hippo, probably a bachelor. Now, Michael, young male hippo, or hippo that are adult, newly adult, Well, especially in the dry times of year like this, they won't be tolerated amongst the bigger adult bull hippo. And where they can, you find these young hippo taking up residence in water bodies that are not suitable for a pod. Now, when he gets a bit older and a bit bigger and a bit more capable of fighting, you'll find that Pete will absolutely move back and try as hard as he can to win himself a stretch of river or space at a dam where he can actually have some females of his own. At the moment, Pete is still a little bit young. He is an adult. He is definitely not an adolescent anymore, but he's a young adult, and he's not strong enough to have any females of his own, and therefore he's been ostracized and has taken up residence here in these pans rather than having to face the wrath and the anger and the aggression of the prime males in the pods in the rivers and the larger dams in the area. So he's actually doing it to stay alive. Very clever hippo. And hippo kill a lot of hippo. They are very aggressive towards their own species. With up to 50% of all the hippo that die in a year actually dying because of fighting amongst one another rather than anything else. Can you believe? Let's have a look at all these elephants. Isn't that just a fantastic sight? These ellies just milling about. I haven't noticed any of them coming into splash, which tells me that they actually are absolutely thirsty. Not that hot. It hasn't been a very hot day today. It's only about 80 degrees centigrade. 80 degrees centigrade. Gee whiz, if it was that, my car would be molten. It's 80 degrees Fahrenheit or so, around about 25 to 28 degrees centigrade. Okay, here we've got the one group of ellies. They're going to be making their way past us right now, led by the old female on the right. And Jelly in York, good afternoon Jelly, has asked quite a nice question that has two answers in actual fact. With there being less water, will elephants naturally be a little bit more cautious with how they use the water? Will they like to drink more and spray themselves less, or vice versa? Now Jelly, that all depends on the temperature of the day. When it's cool like this, they will drink more and not spray. And when it's hot, they will spray themselves more than what they will drink. And the reason for that is that being warm-blooded creatures, they need to maintain a constant body temperature. And on very, very hot days, that becomes very tough to do. And that's why elephants have these big ears. And what they'll do is they will spray water up behind their ears to cool their core down, their central body down. So that they don't get heat exhaustion, which for an elephant is just as fatal as it is for a human. Now you can notice there's a bit of ears opening here, trumpeting. They're fighting now for the fresh water bubbling out of the pipe. What's this elephant got in his trunk, Tebs, this youngster here? It looks like he's got a stick or a thorn damage. You see that? Gee whiz. Looks like that elephant's... no, it's just a feather. Just my overactive imagination wanting to see there's something wrong with this elephant, but there's nothing wrong with it, absolutely. So these ellies are just getting a little bit tense around the water with one another. Obviously, what we've got to watch out for is a little bit of displacement aggression. So while I'm speaking quite calmly here, and I'm trying my best to keep an eye on every elephant in this group. In particular, what I'm trying to do is keep my eye on the matriarchs. They will be the ones in the herd to dictate the behavior of the herd. And if the matriarch is happy, the rest of the herd is happy. If the matriarch is angry, the rest of the herd is angry. Now watch here, all of a sudden, the scream of an elephant is just something unbelievable. Way off in the distance, a big bull elephant has just arrived. He's coming down, you can see him over there, and I have no doubt that he's going to wade into this area and chase this entire herd of elephant away, unless when he gets here, he's not as big as what he seems. He looks like a fairly old bull. You see those sunken temples of his? Big tusks. He won't tolerate this herd around this area. Now have a look what's happening over here. Sorry, Tibbs, I'm all over the place. The repairs that were done by Jim Reeves and his team today are now proving to be quite a handy source of a dust bath for this matriarch. Shame, all their hard work. And what they're doing. And there's a question that's been burning me as well. Charlie has just asked me, how did they repair this pan with Pete still in it? Because obviously it doesn't look like Pete has moved at all. I'm going to say very carefully, and probably not on foot. They would have scooped the sand that they've got, that you see there on the bank, which is that reddish sand which was used to bolster up the side of the pan that Pete has damaged in his comings and goings. They would have bolstered it up from the back of a car. Is my only answer that I can give. Not having seen what they did to the pan, that is how I would do it. Because approaching Pete on foot at this tiny little pan is folly. Hippo are definitely one of the things that you have to keep most aware of out here. In my opinion, hyena rank number 1 as being dangerous to us here, and second is hippopotamus, followed by crocodile. And the reason why I have it in that order is because hyena are absolutely not afraid of coming into camp, and we get so blasé with the way that we are in camp. You know, quite often we will fall asleep with our doors open in these hot summer nights, and I have many horror stories from hippo. From hyena at least. Secondly, it's hippo because of these pans that these hippo frequent. Quite often here in the Sabi Sands, you get hippo in the most unexpected places. And it's because you don't know that a new pan was all of a sudden put there. And bumping into a hippo without knowing that he's there can have disastrous consequences for you. On foot, this is what I'm talking about now, of course. And then lastly, crocodile. You know, hot days like we've been having in summer, the temptation to go and dive into a dam is sometimes overwhelming. And there are definitely a lot of stories floating around this part of the Kruger National Park from guys that have been bitten on their legs and their arms. Isn't it just wonderful to see how these elephants are just enjoying this water, enjoying the mud, enjoying the sand that Jim and his team have kindly left here for their dust bath? That elephant bull in the background that you're seeing over there is enormous. He's going to be coming through here now. He's much bigger than I first thought he was. In actual fact, you'll see when he gets here, he's easily double the size of these females. And when I say double, that's a gamble that I'm taking. But I'm basing it on the fact that his tusks are just massive. And he's got these huge sunken temples. And let's see what he does when he gets up here. Generally, bull elephant won't tolerate female elephant around pans like this, and will probably end up chasing these females away. Let's see what he does when he gets here. They're also quite patient. I mean, I must be honest with you, we're not going to be seeing, I'm not predicting at least anyway, that we see any massive action over here. And of course, because I've predicted that he's going to chase these females away, he probably won't. But have a look at the size of him when he comes up here. Not the biggest bodied elephant, definitely a bull. Have a look at how the females make some space for him, only because of his size. And now that you can see them next to one another, you can see what I mean about being roughly double their size, not quite double their height of this big female he's with. Definitely bigger. And have a look, coming to slake his thirst. Some beautiful tusks on him. Oh, Donna in California has asked a fantastic question. Do the females ever fight? Donna, they will protect their young and they will protect their families with their tusks, but they don't fight one another. There's no reason for the females to fight one another. They will discipline calves with their tusks. You'll see them bash their tusks on their calves. But their tusks, no, not really for fighting, not like those bulls. And the prime example is what Tebs is showing you there. Have a look at the female, she's on the right. Her tusks are pointed down and are more utilitarian than they are for fighting. And that bull's tusks, have a look when we can see his tusks again. That's a beautiful shot of his tusks. They're used for stabbing as well as for feeding. And have a look how the bull's tusks angle forward. You can see that. You can imagine if that bull is now having a head-bashing competition with another bull, how much of an advantage having tusks that face forward like that are. Contrasted to the female tusks, their natural head-down position when they're feeding, their tusks point more to the ground and point more down. So yes, they will use their tusks for defense. Yes, they will stab one another or stab at one another with their tusks to discipline calves and unruly adolescents, but they do not fight one another, not nearly as much as what bull elephant will. He's got a pair of magnificent tusks, doesn't he? Easily double the circumference of the females around him. Not the biggest elephant I've ever seen in the park. The Kruger National Park has on average the largest tusked bulls on the African continent. Isn't that a wonderful fact? You do find a couple of parks around Africa having very large tuskers, some of which are quite famous. Amboseli in Kenya is well known for having some fantastic tusked bulls. Some of the forest elephant that you see pictures of from time to time are fantastically tusked. But in terms of large tusks, oh, look at this mud bath going on here. In terms of fantastically tusked bull elephant, the Kruger National Park surpasses all other. It's not uncommon for elephant of this size that you're seeing now to have tusks that reach all the way to the floor. Can you imagine that? Oh, what's this guy going to do? He's going to kick up some mud? I don't even think he's realized that there's a hippo in this pond. Let's see if Pete nips him on the bum when he goes and lies down. It looks like he... Oh, there we go. So much for all the clean water. He's just cooling himself down, splashing his belly, making some mud. You might find that he not only sprays sand, there we go, up on his flanks, definitely on his ears. All the elephant's blood in their body circulates very quickly through their ears, and they can actually lose a lot of body heat. They radiate a lot of body heat out of those ears. That's precisely what their function is. Big radiators. And as they flap their ears open, you'll notice the network. Oh, look at this little baby trying to get out. Using their knees, using his elbows. Quite incredible how these elephants can actually get around, I must be honest with you. You find elephant in the most unbelievable places. This little guy's still furry. Still got a fuzz of hair all over him. You notice that there on his forehead. Reminds me a lot of myself, actually. It was my little fuzz that I have on my bald patch on my forehead. Staying right next to mom. Doesn't want to get lost there at all. Andreen, I think you've asked the question of all questions, and I'm sure Jim Reeves is busy swearing long and hard from his room at the moment. Andreen is wanting to know, how long is this bank of red sand going to last? Probably not very long, to be quite honest, but it'll also become more and more difficult for these elephant to use it as a dustpan. The more they come and step on it, and the more buffalo compact it. Hopefully, the buffalo turns
most beautiful elephants I have seen in a month.
Way before it has a hole in it again. Have a look at this bull. He's just shoved his way into the middle of this group of elephant. I don't know what he's doing here. Oh, he's wanting some fresh water to drink. I thought he was maybe chasing a female in some estrus. And very silently, the matriarch has given her command to go. And these elephants are traipsing off. Not the ones that you're having a look at, but half of them have gone. But it's okay, we'll stick with this guy having some fresh water out of. You can see how he hasn't wet his entire body. He's just wet his back and his ears. The parts of his body that get the hottest, that need to be cooled down the most. He's now wasting all the water that is coming out of the pipe. He's definitely not the biggest, oldest bull that I've seen. I'm just trying to have a look and see if he's a little bit out of shape in terms of condition, or if he's actually old. It's quite tough to say. His ears are tattered at the top, not too tattered at the bottom. His temples are sunken. That's what you're busy having a look at over there, and relatively sunken, but that could just be a sign of the times, finding enough grass to feed him at the moment. And if he didn't look after himself through winter, he definitely would be a bit skinnier. His hide is in fantastic condition. He's not the biggest bodied elephant. He's got a nice set of tusks. His tusks are not too chipped or broken or too worn. I don't know how old this elephant is. I would say he's probably in his 40s. Probably around about 40, I would say. In this area, they live up 55 to 60 years old. That's what they live towards. So he's still got a few years to go. And I think if he gets a good meal or has a good season, he definitely will put on some more weight. But before the bird that Jamie has flies away, I think we're quickly going to send you through to Jamie. We'll stick by these elephants. Hopefully they won't go into some thick bush. See you in a bit.
We've made our way towards Arathusa Dam and encountered one of the most striking raptors that we see in these areas, an African fish eagle. And the call is one of the most iconic sounds of the African bush. And in the background you can also hear the whistles of the grey-headed shrikes. That very low, ghostly sound. I'm not even going to try and imitate it. We've been over this morning. My lips are too cracked to whistle. That low whistle is also what gives the bird its Afrikaans name of spookvoël, or ghost bird. Although this fish eagle looks pretty ghostly, sitting on top of that tree. And I suppose I'm very tempted to join in the game of Marco Polo that's happening in the swimming pool. Just to confuse things, to shake things up. You hear shouts of Marco and Polo. It's just some guests having a wonderful time across at the lodge. I haven't given much thought to the impact that these slowly disappearing dams have on fish eagles. Well, lucky for them, they are able to fly and relocate and move across to areas where there's plenty more water. So across to apparently the Letaba rivers, the Olifants rivers, apparently those are both flowing within the Kruger, so they'd be able to relocate there. But I think that the Arathusa Dam has attracted this particular individual because it's starting to shrink. Not starting to, it continues its shrinking process, and it makes catching fish a little bit easier. It's a good place to be if you're a fish eagle. It's actually one of the birds that probably has thrived over the last few weeks. But as you can see, the constant drop in water levels throughout the reserves. I'm currently on Arathusa, and this is probably the biggest dam within our Traverse area at the moment. And when I first started working here, it extended up over the island, up towards the lodge, and the hippos were all sort of pushed to the edge so that they could stand there. Now they are very much sort of wrapped up in their waterweed world, and very much restricted as to where they can go. Here's our Egyptian geese, always present at Arathusa Dam. I think the record I counted was 19. Was it 19? The other day I was here with, I think it was VM. It wasn't you, Brian. I think it was VM. Oh, apparently the record is actually 26 Egyptian geese at the Arathusa Dam. Slightly restricted today. Not quite so many. There's probably about 10 or 11 or so wandering around. Not quite 26. Very, very quiet around here. And the beautiful, oh, nice combination there. The bird in the front is the blacksmith lapwing. The bird in the top of your screen behind that, wandering around the waterweeds, is an African jacana. One of the few bird species where the female actually is the one that mates with the male and then lays her eggs and then abandons them and leaves the male to raise her chicks, and she continues on to the next man. A very, very unusual reproductive strategy for birds. I guess for them as well, this is also fairly good conditions for now. The waterweed world has shrunk, which means they can pretty much go anywhere wandering around on top of the waterweeds, and their feet are enormous and well spread out to take the weight. So it looks at times almost like they're walking on water. Like that one. There's times when it looks as though it's dashing about over the surface of the water. Busy scavenging things like little tadpoles, possibly even frogs' eggs, fish eggs, and maybe even freshwater mollusks. I'm going to continue on with my search around the drainage lines of Arathusa. In the meantime, Steph still has that wonderful elephant sighting, so let's head back across there.
These two youngsters, you'll notice from their tails being up, they're just practicing they're practicing. It's fun now, they're having a game, but what's become deadly serious in years to come. Two young bulls that are practicing all the bluff and bravado that they need and will need in intimidatory tactics when they get a bit older. They're forward a little bit. You can see them jostling over there. They're having a bit of a wrestling match. It's been protracted, I think, just because they've had a good meal today and because they've had some nice water. They definitely are feeling a bit jovial. Let's just see when we get a little bit closer. Let's see. There you can see them doing their thing. It's actually quite entertaining to watch. I've just put us into a bit of a better position here to watch the antics of these two. He comes with his head up. Very typical of an elephant bull That's what they do. And you'll see he'll practice all these tricks now. He's looking at us through the leaves over there. Ears spread wide, head held high. Here's his friend kicking around some elephant dung. He's playing some soccer over there. Here goes his other buddy. Bit of action here, you'll see. He's going to use some of these trees as a forward a little bit. Let's see what this young guy does. I'm hoping they come into this space over here, Tebsy. So if you have a look, there's one elephant there, and there's another one coming through here. And they're just youngsters. I don't even think they're teenagers just yet. Probably just getting there. Having a good game at the moment. Let's see what they do, and they come into the open over here. There we go. And boom, they have a bit of a clash. There we go. Quite tough to see. Sorry, the bush is very thick at the moment. Let's hope they come into this open patch that I've been priming them for. Look at all the dust that's obscuring the view that we have of them. Come on, come into the open, be nice. That's displacement behavior that you see him doing over there. They actually just kick stuff like that. They kick grass and things like that. Oh, what he's doing is he's using it to kick up a disturbance there now. Let's see what he does. Taking out his aggression there on the stick. And he goes and kicks another stick, rushes through the bush, reverses into it. Here goes his friend, also holding their head up high. You can see there. Let's see if they come out. See if he's also going to do his whole stick kicking thing. I learned so much about elephant aggressive behavior by watching young bulls like this. They teach you so much about what the older bulls are doing. Tibsy, there's a bird here we don't get to see very often. Just while we're up there, sorry, bud. Just while we're up there, there's a plum-colored starling or a violet-backed starling that's hunting through the middle of these elephants and just using the elephants disturbing the bushes to kick up insects. And there he comes. Oh, he's got a nest right here. How wonderful is that? Scott would be absolutely delighted to know where this violet-backed starling, here it comes again. It's just done this full 360 around it. Got a nest on this tree. Scott is, of course, obsessed with finding nests, and he's actually the best on the team at finding. Here it comes again. Let's see if I can get you into a position to actually see this. One of my favorite birds. You can just see him sitting on the branch there, Tibbs. Probably quite tough to actually get. Yeah, you can just see his head there. You'll have to go left a bit, sorry Tibsy. He's just sitting there through the gap. You may just have a gap. It's so difficult to find these birds on the view through the viewfinder. You're forgetting Tebs hasn't got any peripheral vision, can't see these birds at all. And not only does he have to try and find it, he's also got to try and focus on it. And there you can just see Tebs has got it. I'm going to roll slightly forward so we can get it in the open. There we go. It's got something in its beak. There you go. Male violet-backed starling on camera. A very, very difficult thing to do. And there he goes into the nest. You can hear the babies. Oh. And there the male flies off again. I can actually hear the babies calling inside there. So he's just gone and fed his brood. And that nest is inside that stump. A violet-backed starling all the way from the Central African rainforests come here to come and have their babies. And there we've just found a nest. Dad having decided that it was safe enough to go in and feed the little ones. Definitely going to mark that. They won't stay babies for too long. Birds actually fledge really, really quickly, a couple of weeks and then they're out of the nest. Let's see what these ellies are doing. That big male elephant, he's still hanging around the water. The rest are feeding. Italian has asked why we don't see elephant holding their tails like we did in old school books. Italian, it's a question that's pretty self-explanatory. It's probably due to the fact that the school book was a storybook and generated by a person who may or may not have visited India, where elephants have been tamed or have been habituated to people and used as domestic animals for a long time. And there you do absolutely get the tradition of elephants holding their tails. And quite often what happened, people who had seen pictures of India or renditions of India back in Europe drew their impression on what they think or thought African elephants needed to do or in their behavior. Meanwhile, it was a taught thing. It's a way for the elephants to stay in contact with one another when they're being led around for work. Elephants have been used in India in particular to haul logs out of the forest, and even insofar as being used as fighting animals for hundreds of years. In Africa, that's a bit of a different story. The African elephant, as far as I know, has never been domesticated to that point. Hannibal may have used African elephants, although I think even he used domesticated Indian elephant in his escapades. But so yes, that would be my thought, is that I've never seen an African elephant holding a tail like I have seen in storybooks, and I have seen it in storybooks. And the only reason that I can think of is absolutely the one I've just given, is that it was an observation made on domesticated animals that somehow found its way into the description of African animals, perhaps. Alright, let's go back to this pan, now that I've marked the position of that violet-backed starling. Windy23 has asked if I know what defines a bird as a starling. That's a good question, Windy. I might just have to delve into my bird book to give you the answer to that question. It's not something that I have on hand, immediately on hand, but it would be easy enough for me to find. The bird book that I have gives a description of genus and species, and that is where I'm expecting to find the answer. Wow, look here. Oh, okay, maybe not. We've still got these ellies here, and while Tebs takes you through to the elephant, I'll have a look for the answer to your question there. Winnie? Let's give you over to ellies. I will take out my bird book. Shouldn't take me too long. You just bear with me while you're watching this beautiful elephant sighting here at Djuma Dam. there's elephant all over the place. It's good. So page 396 in my bird book start giving us all of the starlings. So all the starlings belong to a genus of birds called Lamprotornis, and Lamprotornis is the Greek word for a bright or shining thing, which is where the word starling comes from. So Lamprotornis, the Greek word for bright or shining bird, and that is where we get the starlings from. Very interesting. So thanks for answering that. Thanks for asking that question. You know, it's always amazing how you can go out here and you can learn something brand new every single day. See something that you actually have never seen before every single day. If all you do is just open yourself up to it. Now, this chap has been drinking water now pretty much non-stop for the last 15 or 20 minutes, and they will actually be able to drink up to 200 liters of water in a day. Now, to get gallons for that, you just divide that by 5. I'll give you an idea of how many gallons it is, and whatever it is, it's a lot. And they will need to drink every day. So they, unlike lion and some of the antelope species, some of the ruminating mammals out here, they are unable to get enough moisture from the vegetation that they eat. They actually have to drink water every day. And although you do find some specialized African elephants in the desert of Namibia, it's actually quite rare to see elephant far away from water. They're far more common where there's good surface water than they are where there isn't. Have a look at that youngster having some fun with Jim Reeves' sand. Jen has just asked, how big is this elephant bull at the shoulder? How tall is this elephant bull at the shoulder, to give you some perspective? That's actually quite a good question, Jen. He's not the tallest elephant bull that I've ever seen, and they are 3.5 meters tall. I would say that he's a good probably 2.8 meters, which is, let's see, we times that by 3, so 16 feet. 16 feet, somewhere around there at the shoulder. He's a relatively tall guy, not the tallest Ellie, but yeah, 16 feet would be my average, and I'm drawing that from the fact that I'm 1.8 meters tall, and I would probably come up to where that nook is in his ear, or that notch is in his ear. That's probably where I'd be standing. Now, we've got another game drive vehicle that is going to be joining us in a second.
Okay. How is this doing Yamada?
And
I'm not there with them. I'm
in the car that I have at the moment, the game drive channel is an open channel, so I keep it off actually, which is naughty of me, I know, because people can't get hold of me that want to come and see these elephant, but nonetheless, they can come if they would like. And Pam in Ohio has noticed that there's another young elephant, or a smaller elephant, that is hanging around with this big bull. Pam, she's not actually a young elephant at all. It's actually a female elephant, and a full-grown female. It's just she's dwarfed in size by this ginormous male that is next to her. And it's because although elephant are in herds with one another, they're not always right next to one another. She obviously didn't get a good enough drink when she was all the hustle and bustle was happening around the water point a little bit earlier on, and all she's gone and done is she's now just waited her turn. Elephant can communicate up to 6 or 7 miles away from one another in the bush using very low frequency sound. So she's fully aware of where her family is. And her calf, which is now that youngster that is sneaking up behind her, he also had to wait his turn here at the water. Obviously because Mom was holding back, he held back as well. This bull is being a little bit selfish by not allowing them as much water as they'd like. You can see this youngster now reversing himself in there quite sneakily. Ever so slowly just reversing himself in there. And she sneakily just got some water. Now that big bull is just busy shoved that youngster with his tusk to get him out of the way. Greedily just sucking up this water. And back to the violet-backed starling that we were having a look at. Gerda has just asked the question, will they still be here in May? Because Gerda will be coming through to the Kruger in May. Gerda, the answer to that is no. There might be the odd one that's still around at that time, but they generally leave in about March. As soon as the insect load here drops off, they tend to leave as soon as their babies have fledged, and they go right back up to the rainforests. As soon as the season starts to rain a little bit less up there, it rains incredibly hard, and for massive amounts of time in the summertime in the forests in Central Africa, and they come all the way down here so that they don't have to be in the rain and can enjoy the insects. But as soon as they fledge their babies and as soon as their babies are ready to travel, they go back to the rainforests again, and we don't see them until December. So we really only see violet-backed starlings from around about Christmas time to March, the end of March, with the odd one flying through in May. You may be lucky, depending on when in May you're coming. If it's the end of May, then no. If it's the beginning of May, you may be lucky to catch one on his way through. And just because Jamie hasn't had these beautiful ellies and is probably feeling a little bit left out, she's now got a buffalo that she'd love to show you, and we absolutely have to go and see that. So we'll catch up with you in a little bit. We're going to stick here at these ellies. Don't go anywhere.
I was feeling a little bit left out of the action. Seems very quiet on Arathusa. Luckily we've bumped into this gentleman with some interestingly pockmarked horns. He's broken the tips off both of them. He's also been rubbing his head on either a tree, most likely a tree, possibly the ground, but I think it's most likely a tree. You can see the residue spread all over his boss. The boss, of course, being the thick, bony base of those incredible horns. Yeah, and he's been through the wars, this one. Tatty ears, broken horns, chipped and worn away at the top. A real veteran of life. Actually, a very obliging veteran of life. I thought he was going to go wandering away from us, but he's actually coming towards us, which when you're on foot is a very different feeling to when you're on the vehicle. An animal not to be underestimated. Accompanied by the ever-present oxpeckers, feeding off his tick and parasite load. Hello boy, yes, I'm talking about you. And he's not in bad condition. He's actually a pretty good-looking buffalo bull, a bit tatty. But he looks healthy enough, a little bit thin, as is we're seeing with all of the buffalo at the moment. As pretty much sole grazers rather than browsers, they are particularly hard hit by the drought. Hear the ox picket chirping away. It's always fascinating to watch the way the dog's pickers work. In the way that they comb their beaks through the fur. We'll hold that thought for the moment until we can actually see the oxpecker again. He's got a little bit of a touch of mange around his belly. Since he is so nice and relaxed, I'm going to get us another clear view of him. Just letting the engine run for a second before moving. It's always a good idea to turn your engine on, let it run for a bit before moving the vehicle. It's just slightly less startling where the animal is concerned. Hello, boy. It's all right, boy. All those dents and crevices around this guy's horn base, around his boss. Monique, you were wondering if that damage is all from fighting or if he has some kind of disease. My suggestion as to what that might be from, and you see it fairly regularly on these old buffalo boys, is that yes, part of the damage is from fighting, so they create chips and holes in the horn itself, and then the rest of it comes from infection. So those deep pock marks, the bone starts to get eaten away where it has been damaged or when there's a slight fault line. Bear in mind, of course, that horns on all antelope species and bovids, like the buffalo, are living bone. So they're supplied with blood vessels. They are constantly growing and repairing. And so when there is some kind of an injury, it does open them up to a slow disintegration of that bone. And the oxpeckers, as useful as they can be, are not always all that helpful in that respect. So when that injury happened, you probably have found that the oxpeckers worried at it and picked away at it. They're one of those curious examples of a combination. It's all right, boy, carry on munching. Combination of helpful and harmful, depending on the condition of the animal. So they feed on the ticks, and just one little bird like that could eat 1,000 ticks in a day. So he's made this buffalo his project for the afternoon, very noisily. So he could get rid of all of the parasites, but if an animal has an injury, the birds also feed off blood and mucus. So they keep them open long after they should have healed. It always amazes me how tolerant, though, the animals are of their presence, particularly when they're pecking at an injury. That very noisy bird. Those sharp, almost electric sounds that come from him. I saw earlier this buffalo does have an injury, but it's right close to his right back thigh. There, I saw it very briefly there. It looks like, I think, probably an old horn wound. Oh no, it's not that bad at all. You can see all of the ticks encrusted around his inner thighs. Pleasant. Oh, he's broken his tail as well. Only just noticed that. A seriously kinky tail. So he's been in the wars, this guy. And these old Duggar boys off on their own, mud encrusted as they are from spending the day wallowing, usually have a I imagine, have a story to tell. They wander off away from the herd when they start to get older. And it tends to make them slightly foul-tempered as well. Not an animal that you really enjoy encountering in the bush. Buffalo breeding herds are wonderful when you're on foot, but when you're on foot and you encounter one of these gentlemen, they often come as a surprise, and it's not always a pleasant one. Particularly, as we've mentioned a couple of times now, at this time of year in this drought. Everything's feeling the extra pinch and a little bit of extra stress as well. He's a very obliging gentleman, though. He has not been nervous at all with us here. He looked at us a couple of times. He hasn't moved off. He's been quite comfortable in our presence. Very tattered ears as well. Monique, also those tattered ears will come from small scratches or places where he's hooked them on thorns, something along those lines, and then made larger by infection and the work of the oxpeckers worrying at them. So it works in a similar way. And there you can see how he acquired the green around his horn base, wandering into the trees. Steph, I mentioned him being obliging. I would love it if he moved forward a little bit. But Steph, you've asked whether or not it looks like he's got a slightly shorter tail than normal. Maybe. You've got me doubting now. I'm trying to think. I didn't notice it initially. I don't think it's that much shorter. I think the kink might make it look a bit shorter. Although, maybe you're right. Maybe that break happened when he was a lot younger and stunted the growth, because it does look a little bit shorter than the normal buffalo tail. I don't know, Steph. I'm going to have to find another buffalo to compare it to. I'm taking note of how long his tail is, and we'll have a look when we see our next buffalo boy. And from one Steph to another, we're going to pop back across and have a look at some more elephants.
And from a very crusty buffalo, as far as I know, to another herd of elephant that is coming in, around about the same size as that herd that we saw, or both of the herds that we had previously. So around about 8 to 12 individuals. I haven't really actually counted this particular herd. And from where we can see probably 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 elephant. And they're also slowly making their way through to this pan, and it's going to be so nice to see them eventually move down here. We've got these two youngsters. It's another two youngsters that are also having a bit of a wrestle around this bush. Slightly older than the last ones. Have a look at them just thrashing that tree to death, that guari tree. Just having an absolute fun time. And just like I said a little bit earlier, these youngsters are practicing a very serious game, in that they are practicing to fight for when they get a little bit older, and learning all the skills that they need for when the dead serious jousting competitions happen, when they're as old as this big male elephant that we have on the left hand side. Have a look at what he's doing now. He's now using one of the stumps that Jim Reeves have pulled onto the bank that he so nicely fixed today, and using it as a bit of a toothpick. Now that is an elephant-sized toothpick if I've ever seen one. That stump is probably as thick as my waist. And that Ellie's just using it as a perfect scratching post to get into all the hard-to-reach places there underneath the flange of his lip. Between his lip and his tusk. Must actually be quite a very difficult place to clean. And he goes on the other side. You can see how that elephant is very deftly using that stump and the edge of that stump to clean inside there. Tusks are, of course, modified incisors. They get two sets of tusks in their life. One that falls out before they're a year old, called the milk tusks. And then the next set of tusks that they get, which grow for their entire life and start to exponentially grow from about 40 years old, which is why I thought that this elephant was in his 40s, is that elephant tusks start to increase their rate of growth from about 40, and that is because they only really become sexually active from about 35 years old. The really big bulls in their 30s, their late 30s, but really bulls in their prime, in their mating prime, are in their 40s and early 50s, and then they will quickly drop off out of their prime from about 50 to 65 years old. And that is the age of the elephant in the Kruger National Park. Their diet restricts their maximum age that they can get to. And now after almost an hour at this pan, this male has just decided that's that. Picked his teeth clean and does that typical elephant, fast elephant walk down the embankment to disappear for another bout of feeding. Monique, all the way from London. Hello, Monique. I hope it isn't too cold out there while we're busy dying of the heat. You asked a question on when elephant tusks first become visible. When can we see them for the first time? So their tusks actually grow from birth. They get their milk tusks that'll just start showing through their lip at about nine months to a year, and then they'll fall out. And then their real tusks will come through, and you start seeing them emerging from the lip from about a year old, their first tusks, and from then they just pretty much increase. Oh, look at what's happening over here. That male elephant is just having a toilet stop, getting his feet out of the way. Teb's just making absolutely sure that we don't miss this not so private moment that this Ellie's having. Now, what's quite interesting is he's probably drunk about 200 liters of water a day, and I don't think more than 3 liters of water came out there, which is very interesting. A lot of their water is absorbed into that big body, and that's testimony to what you saw there. Tiny little urine splash, a little bit of dung coming out, and then him having or wandering away after having drunk a vast amount of water. He literally hasn't stopped drinking water for easily the last 45 minutes to an hour. Now, males that are not in musth, interesting term that, M-U-S-T-H, musth, which is the period in an elephant's calendar year in which they go into a heightened sexual state. All their glands, their glands in their body start to vigorously produce whatever they're producing due to a testosterone increase, up to 70% more testosterone in their body. Can you imagine? And it makes them irresistible to the females, and it also puts them on a warpath, a rampage, to find any females that are in estrus. This male is not in musth, and I have no doubt that he will just bypass these females after a quick hello. He won't be a bull in attendance, as it's quite often referred to. And those bulls can be very active. You can imagine with 70% more testosterone flying through your body. It's, well, I can't even imagine what that would be like. Now, this other herd of elephant haven't really come through here. They are just stuck on that far bank. I have no doubt they'll come through here eventually, but it looks like they're just enjoying a slow feed up to this dam. Maybe they're going to bypass it and go to the Gallagher pan. But let's give them a few minutes and we'll see what they're up to. Donovan, who's 7 years old and watching from a little town called Secunda in South Africa. Hey Donovan, you've asked how much does an elephant tusk weigh? Well, Donovan, the heaviest elephant tusks were all over 100 pounds, which is over 50 kilograms each. I'm actually not sure what the heaviest tusk ever recorded weighs, but definitely it'll be between 50 and 100 kilograms. I think maybe a touch over 100 kilograms. So a 100-pound bull is considered nowadays to be a massive elephant. So you're looking at around about 50 kilograms per tusk. And that's quite a weight to carry when it's especially long like that. And there's some fantastic photographs of an elephant called Mandlev, one of the magnificent 7 elephant in the Kruger National Park, called Mandlev. It means ear. He had this big tear in his ear. And if you go and look for pictures on the internet of Mandlev, spelt Mandleve, Mandleve, you will see photographs of this enormous bull elephant resting underneath trees with his tusks in the ground. He used to put his tusks on the ground and rest his head on his tusks. I'll give you an idea of an elephant that is a 100-pound tusker. And you can go and have a look there, or ask your mom to give you a hand. Go and have a look at what those tusks look like. Really, absolutely phenomenal sight. This elephant doesn't. Now, I see that there's a tiny elephant in that group, and it doesn't look like they're going to be coming through to this side. So what I'm going to do is I think we're going to reposition, and we'll pick you up on the other side of these elephants. I think let's go send you through to Jamie, and we'll reposition, and we'll see you in a little bit.
Promise of rain over the last 2 days, and I'm seeing lots of patches of blue sky as I'm driving along. Looks as though it's burnt off. And we're going to be going back to, I think we're going to be going, oh, I'm so busy looking in the sky. I drove straight past these girls. Hello girls. Will you stick around for me? Hello, beautiful ladies. We spent quite a bit of time with some female kudu this morning, and we're more towards the drainage line. These are 2 sub-adult females. Absolutely beautiful. One of the most peaceful antelope. Now, we've seen some really pregnant individuals over the last few days, and we've challenged ourselves to be able to capture a live birth on one of our safaris. And the best time to see a live birth is, of course, the sunrise safari, but you never know. You never know what's going to happen out here. I've seen kudu just like these ones. Their slender little legs. You would hardly believe the amount of power that they carry. And I've seen a kudu jump easily over a fence from a standing start. And the fence was about 2 meters high, 6 foot high. And it was just a little hop for them. Their jumping skills are incredible. Female at the back there also showing signs of heavy pregnancy. That bulge in her stomach. I think she might struggle maybe to hop over a fence like I saw. Now, such a wonder of nature at work. Everything is so perfectly designed. From those big radar ears down to those powerful legs. branches. And as browsers, they've had slightly better access to nutrition, like more so than that buffalo. At the moment, they seem to be targeting the silver cluster leaves around here, which, in my opinion, can't be all that appetizing. They seem to be enjoying it. Apparently, silver cluster leaves, as an interesting aside, carry painkiller effects. They can be used as a natural painkiller. There we go, that beautiful silvery tree that we're looking at the moment. I have tested it before. I'm not entirely convinced, but maybe I'm preparing the ingredients wrong. Something that elephants munch on when they've got toothache. Oh, look at that. Hopped up the termite mound like it was nothing. I've seen elephants move up termite mounds just like that at exactly the same speed. Move forward ever so slightly so we can have a look at them munching there. Looking down on us. For that extra level of nutrition that termite mounds sometimes carry. So all of that soil it's been brought up from deep underground by the termites themselves. And what that means is that the nutrients from deep underneath the soil, the minerals and the vitamins and so on, as well as the moisture, have been brought up. And you usually find there's a bit more vegetation around termite mounds, although this particular one looks somewhat barren. That old female's playing King of the Castle at the top there. I wonder what's going through their heads as they survey the area around them. Something's attracted their attention. They're both looking in the same direction. Maybe a slight noise. Could quite possibly be another antelope species as well. Pays to be alert out here. Can roll forward a little bit more. Of course, we've been watching all of the animals go through this drought with heavy hearts. And Gracie, our regular 8-year-old viewer, hello Gracie. Gracie would like to know if Brian would ask the circus to bring trucks of water to help the animals so that they can drink and swim. And Gracie, I wish that Brian could, and I'm sure Brian also wishes that he could. The problem is that there's no water all the way through South Africa. It's not just here. So the trucks from the circus, I think, would take a little bit too long to get here if they had to drive from somewhere else in the world. But Gracie, I'm sure Brian will see if maybe he can ask. Unfortunately, I don't think the circus is going to agree to that.
I'll do my best, Gracie. I'll do my best.
There you go, Gracie. Brian says he's going to do his best. Don't worry, Gracie. The animals will be okay. They're survivors. They've been through droughts before. They know how to survive. And at the end of it all, when the rains come, they'll be really, really happy to see it happen. And they'll be able to enjoy their food even more. Gracie, you've asked me a very difficult question. Not quite as difficult as Gracie's question, but still a tricky one. Macy would like to know if I would go and visit any other reserve around the world or any other animal, what animal would I most like to go and see? And you've suggested things like manatees and pandas and tigers and kangaroos. Macy, that's a difficult one. I think if I had to choose, I would really, really love to see a blue whale. That's one of the dreams of mine, would be to see a blue whale. And to see a tiger in the wild, of course, would also be incredible. And possibly even some of the other rhino species. I've never seen, apart from the black and white rhino, I've never seen anything like the greater one-horned rhino or even the Sumatran rhino. And I think, unfortunately, in life I might have left that a little bit too late, especially for the Sumatran rhino, which is on the brink of extinction. That's top of my list. Brian, do you have any desires to go?
I need to think.
Oh, I know, it's a difficult one. There's too many wonderful things out there to choose one. I have seen kangaroos before. I've been to Australia and seen their wonderful array of wildlife. I think I'd also really like to see gorillas in the wild. That's also always been on my list.
I'd like to see a sloth.
A sloth, yes. Sloths are so cool. Such an awesome, different animal. And one that I know I can relate to on occasion. Look, down again. Is this other one going to follow? I'm distracted now. I'm still thinking about all the animals that I'd like to see. There's birds as well that are on my list. Polar bear, I'd love to see a polar bear. A leopard seal. Sure. And tigers. I think everybody would love to see tigers. I would love to see a tiger. Or a snow leopard. Oh, it's too hard. I can't choose. Sorry, Maisie, I can't choose. Alright, Kuru. Let's leave you and continue on our search for other things. Too many to name. The natural world comes with so many incredible things to see. I'd love to hear from you guys as to what you would love to see as well. So Rich, who is watching in Chicago, I'm going to see if I can find this bird for you. You wanted to know which bird is locally known as Schläger Mufazi, or the cackling woman. The first answer that springs to mind is a bird that we occasionally manage to capture on camera. I'm actually going to find a picture for you in the book as we go along. It is known as a green wood hoopoo. And what happens with them is actually it's known as allomet mimicry. Ooh, say that 5 times fast. Which is where one bird starts to call and the others all join in instinctively. You see it in arrow-marked babblers, and which could in their own way be considered to sound like cackling ladies, but the best is the green wood hoopoo. It's a bird that collects in a group and then they all rock backwards and forwards. They look like ladies having a really, really good laugh at something absolutely hysterical. Stand by, Rich. I'm going to find you a picture quickly. And now we'll try and find you the actual bird as well, because it's a bird that we do yet. Just have to bear with me. My old bird book gave up the ghost. I used to know where all of the birds were pretty much by heart. Oh, I love that tree. Such a beautiful tree. Here we go, Rich. That is the green wood hoopoo, used to be known as the red-billed wood hoopoo. And it actually looks almost black when you see it, unless you catch it in the perfect amount of sunlight. And underneath this tail, which you can't really see in this picture, are black and white, almost like zebra stripes. So when they rock backwards and forwards, it makes for an incredible, incredibly picturesque arrangement of the fluorescence of their feathers and then the black and white stripes underneath their tails. Quite a big bird, just to give you a rough scale. Probably actually about the size of this book. So if I put my hand up, about the size of a page on my book, that bird. And we will be keeping an eye out for one, so I can show you, Rich. And if we're lucky, we might even get them cackling. I did the other day on camera, rocking backwards and forwards. You never know what the joke is. They find something funny, but we'll never know what it is. Interesting note about those birds. What they will do is they will, just before they go to sleep at night, and that's quite common with other bird species as well, but particularly with them, they've done research into this. So essentially what they do is just before they go to bed in the sort of sunset chorus, they'll go and sit in a tree and all cackle together, all perform their normal call. Then they go quiet and they move to another tree. And scientists are starting to think that might be a way almost of drawing attention to somewhere different to where they actually sleep. So if there's any nocturnal predators out there, they might focus on the wrong tree and give the wood hoopoos a better chance of surviving through the night. Of course, the sort of predators I'm talking about that might target a wood hoopoo would be something like a large snake. Wormslang would probably be a little bit small. There are snake species out there that could tackle a wood hoopoo. And then, most importantly, the owl species. So the owls might be awake in the evening, in the late evening, listening out for opportunities, and then take advantage of it when it starts to get fully dark. Birds are incredibly clever creatures. This now is that I'm solely focused on finding green wood hoopoos, which might be a little bit tricky. Curious one on my way through. I've been checking, so Curious One was obviously watching this morning, where I had an update that the wild dogs had crossed onto Vuyatela. Not that I can see. I've looked for tracks, I've looked for signs, other guides have been up and down. None of us have been able to pick up on the tracks, and the only thing I can think of is that sort of update came word of mouth, maybe from somebody who's less familiar with the geography of the properties and got another property mixed up. As far as I can tell, the update from the other guides around Arathusa that traverse south of Arathusa, it seems as though the Investec pack has gone south into Londolozi, from what I understand. Oopsie daisies. Too busy answering questions there. It's the bird of prey that was right above my head. I'm not even entirely sure what it is. I'm stopping here just because I don't want to startle it anymore. Flew straight over us. One of the smaller species. Not a yellow-billed kite, it's a little bit too big. I don't think it's a brown snake eagle either, it's a little bit too small. So something in between. Difficult to see in this afternoon light. It's a pity I didn't spot it before I drove straight underneath it. Very square tail, but it doesn't have the crest of a Wahlberg's eagle. I don't think it's an eagle. What about a sparrowhawk? It'd be very unusual. It would be quite unlikely it to be a sparrowhawk. And with that yellow bill, or half yellow bill, means that it is not a snake eagle. Maybe, don't think it's one of the kites. I don't think it's a black kite. It's a bit tricky now. I can't really see his face properly. Could also be a honey buzzard. It's also one of the options. It's got a dark eye and quite a square tail. And the thing about the honey buzzards is that they've got lots of different color morphs. So they come in all sorts of unusual colors. Don't think it's an eagle, but it's very hard to tell without being able to see the legs, to see if they're feathered all the way down. I wanted to see if there's a crest. Oh well, I'm going to guess at a honey buzzard. Come on, buddy. Show yourself a little bit clearly. Unfortunately, if I try and get any closer, he's going to disappear off. And of course, we are being very careful about where we off-road. I'll roll forward. Let's see if we can get another clearer view of him. In theory, I would roll forward. We're right on the crest of a bolster. Let's see if I can get... Fiona's got a really good point. It's actually, Fiona, it's something I've been questioning as well. I haven't mentioned it on the live safaris. I haven't forgotten my bird. I'm still trying to have a look. You want to know why we haven't been seeing as many yellow-billed kites this year? I've noticed that as well. It's one of the most common raptor species that you see at this time of year in these areas, and my only suggestion is that... No, unfortunately I can't get a nice clear view of our bird. My only suggestion as to why we haven't seen the yellow-billed kites is the drought. It's the only thing I can think of. Maybe the fact because kites target insects in particular and they collect all of the various ones around here. Oh, I found a relative of Rich's bird. Try to get a view of that. There we go. There it is. There's a cuckoo there. A relative of the bird that we spoke. Live safaris. Trying to capture live safaris with subjects that have wings. They're not always all that cooperative. Where'd you go? Stop. Gone. Oh, Rich, I'm sorry. I tried. I was trying to get you a view of a hoopoe, which is a relative of the wood hoopoe that we were talking about. Oh well, at least we found all of the impala on Djuma, apparently. Fiona, I think it's the drought. I think they've moved to wetter areas, maybe around the reserves, closer to the mountains where all of the rain seems to stop. Good afternoon, everybody. Lots of impala on, very conveniently, on the aptly named Impala Plains. That's a nice big breeding herd. Fiona, one thing I'm going to do is I'm going to ask Emma as to whether or not she's seen an increase. She's still here with me. And Emma works on a reserve closer towards the mountains that had a little bit more rain than we have. I'll ask her. I'll see if maybe... Look at the... Sorry, Brian. Can you go back a little? The lambs grooming each other. Already demonstrating that adult behavior, allo grooming. Impala are one of the few antelope that you'll actually see that behavior in. A little bit of herd bonding. I'll double check and see if she's seen more yellow-billed kites. Sorry, jumping from subject to subject. probably about, how many would we say, Brian? 30? Roughly? Rough estimate. Oh. Evening bath time. And usually the lambs are in nursery groups at this age, but around this time of the evening, they move back towards their moms so that they can have some time, bonding time, and a little bit of a meal. They're already eating solids, but they're still suckling at the same time. And apparently this is bath time for the impala. Everybody seems to be having a bit of a groom or a scratch. Interestingly, the impala's lower teeth, so the incisors on the bottom jaw, are all slightly loose in their sockets. So they form almost like a comb that they can then run through their fur. Oh, trying to suckle. Oh, Steph's made his way to the hyena den, and one of the cubs is getting brave.
Well, from one mammal to another, and we've come all the way out here to the hyena den, and we've got some action going over here. We've got this young hyena with sibling in tow coming to inspect our car. You can see how close they are, like right here. With the youngest one literally just following this one now. This one got a little bit shy of the vehicle. They're literally 3 or 4 feet away from the car at the moment, from the front of the car, with that youngster being about 10 feet away. And when we arrived, the youngster was busy nursing on the mom, and has been nursing literally up until about 60 seconds ago, just before you came. Leaving this adolescent wandered in from the bush. I think he was just lying in the shade, or she was just lying in the shade. And as she wandered in, the baby stopped nursing and has now come to inspect a rather interesting smell at the base of this knockdown bush. You can see that I haven't been in the driving seat for a while. My excuses are, or I apologize for that. I see that it is November that is following around May. With November at the moment quite far away from Mom. Mom has actually all of a sudden become very interested in what November's up to. Obviously because November is now just that uncomfortable distance away. Oh, they are so cute when they're this age. Much more closely related to bears and cats than they are to dogs. As you can see, that face and that spotted. Here comes one of the adults. Also nursing quite heavily. This was not the hyena that November was nursing on.
Yuri, I haven't heard the guys out this afternoon. To give my point of info today. Craig, tell me on which den are the hyenas at the moment?
You can see this very elaborate greeting that's happening at the moment.
Apparently, halfway from the dam to Gari Bottoms cut line, there's a definite 2 tracks to the west towards the.
Yeah, absolutely. We've been fascinated over the last couple of months as to the unbelievable complexity of this highly social animal. They've been likened to primates in their social organizing. In actual fact, it's incredible. Oh, there's another cub coming out of the den as well, behind the female on the left. I just saw the ears popping out over the side there. That one cub is going in there now. There, you can just see there. Look there. Looks like another 2 cubs. And I'm just being told by Jerry that those are D1 and D2 from being born in December, so not quite as new as what I expected them to be. You just excuse me while I'm on the radio for 2 seconds. We got someone coming to join us, and they've been asking me to give them an update on the radio, and I've been ignoring them.
Yes, Bengala are where we just come from. Bengala are the two males.
Oh, these are hyenas. This is a communal den.
Okay, cool, thanks.
Now, what will happen is subordinate females will go and have their cubs at satellite dens. The lower down the rank they are, the longer it'll take them to bring their cubs to the communal den, with the dominant or the alpha female giving birth to her cubs here at the communal den. They have a much higher status than what the other cubs will have. Quite tough to say where what came from, unless you've been following them as closely as what we do. I definitely haven't been following them that closely because I haven't been out on drive as much. You won't know who's subordinate. Good guess. Definitely the subordinate ones will be deferential to the alpha female. Now, if you'd excuse me just for 2 seconds. Yuri coming for Steph. Just while I call in this next vehicle. Yuri Steph. Yuri, please excuse me for not answering you immediately. I am live on air, but you're welcome to come and join us at the hyena den. It is active. Just myself in this position.
Thanks, man. Watching.
All right, thank you very much for your patience. And now right back to this grooming attitude that you're seeing over here. Hyena, they do carry massively high bacteria loads, obviously because of the fact that they're definitely not shy of rolling around in carcasses, and they'll eat anything of any age, and they can be quite disgusting in their habits. But you never really find a dirty hyena. They're quite fastidious in terms of keeping themselves clean. You can have a look at this female. Not the biggest female. Oh, look at those teeth. Nice big stretch. And an apt name. Very pretty hyena, and that is pretty. Very good looking hyena. She comes walking in. Cub immediately goes shooting off to the den, and the May goes wandering off into the bush again. Now, all cubs will act submissive to any adult that comes up to the den up to about 6 months. And then the hierarchy starts to kick in, and you'll find groups of cubs actually mobbing hyenas of a lower social rank, and absolutely mobbing male hyenas that are nomads that come into the area. And nomads are mobbed no matter what. They come in and they definitely they put up with it with the most unbelievable patience. And the most amazing thing about it is that these males that tend to be bullied as much as what they can possibly be bullied are responsible for over 95% of the cubs being born. So really large males that are not nomadic and hang around the clan areas are really good condition and big, and they treat it a bit better, but they are only responsible for between 5 and 0% of the cubs born. Definitely the cubs are born to these nomadic males who, for the right of siring these young, get mobbed by everything and anything that comes out of these dens. So have a look at this little guy. Can you imagine the smells that this December or this nose is busy telling it? They've come backwards and forwards from that patch. I don't quite know what's there. Devet in Secunda, another viewer from Secunda. It's actually the first time since I've been hosting the show that we've had so many viewers from Secunda, and testimony to how awesome the place is. Devet, how do you tell the difference between male and female hyena? It's actually quite difficult to sex hyena, but the easiest way to do it is to have a look at the view that you're having a look at now. On males, even though it will be less pronounced than in any other animal, males will have a scrotum, and females, although they have a vestigial scrotum, they are definitely don't have an unbroken piece of skin there. There is a vagina present. It's a urogenital opening, very similar to how you find what you find in birds, to be honest. It's not a true cloaca. It's just a pseudo penis, as they like to call it. For many reasons, hyena were considered hermaphrodites up until about 1870, when that myth was discounted. You definitely have male and female. It's just females have developed very masculine traits in an effort to give their babies the best possible chance in life that they can. That's the sort of distilled version as to why they have these male-looking parts. There you can have a look. You can see the pseudo scrotum and the pseudo penis. That is what's lying between the thighs, and then underneath the tail you can actually see what looks like a scrotum, but it's actually exactly what you're looking at right now, is that urogenital opening. And it's quite a funny shape. It's a dog-leg shape up into the uterus. And as many as 40% of all the females that give birth to babies die at their first, when they whelp, I suppose is what you'd call it, for the first time. Have a look at those three definite lobes there. You've got the one under the tail, the one that's between the knees, and then you had that pseudopenis. That is evident in a female. In a male, they'll only have two knobs, the penis and the scrotum. So that's about the easiest way that I can tell you there, Devet. Not always easy. She's given us a lovely display, or is giving us a lovely display. And Debbie's asked, if the dominant female dies, would her offspring retain dominance? And the answer to that is no, Debbie. When the dominant female dies, the babies lose rank and will become some of the lowest ranking females in that clan. And so it's quite catastrophic for a hyena, or a baby at least, to lose a mother before they become an adult and are able to defend their social rank or their social status from the other clan members. But, it's necessary. You do need a change of guard, for lack of a better expression, amongst the alphas. It adds a mix of genes at the top. Alphas are definitely given preference at kills, and will definitely be bigger and will definitely be much better fed, and therefore have more babies than the rest of the clan members. And it's important that you have that position change from time to time, not only through competition with one another, but also through lion and other predators whittling away at the hyena ranks. Hyenas do not change social structure, so you don't get a lower ranking female all of a sudden becoming an alpha through infighting. The only way that alphas change is when the alpha dies and has no clear successor, for lack of a better word. Now you'll notice that there's a distinct lack of bones around this particular den site. Now, not only is this den site new, there's one or two bones that I can see, but they're not from fresh kills. They're actually just brought in as toys. Only the alpha pair will bring in, or the alpha female will bring in, or the dominant female will bring in. There's a bone there, just as a toy. As you can see, that pretty much as fossilized as what you can get. Only the alpha pair will bring in carcasses from far away. And the reason for that is that when a carcass is brought to a communal den, even if a low-ranking female brings it in for her cubs,
Stations are going to be crossing back to the east.
that meat that's on that carcass that they bring back to the dens is almost always stolen by the higher-ranking
Back
cubs.
to the east. Any updates?
So it's quite expensive for, metabolically speaking, that is, for a lower-ranking female to drag a carcass all the way back to a den. For them, even though it's very expensive from a metabolic point of view to eat meat and then produce milk, that is unfortunately what they have to do to feed their cubs. And quite often you find cubs from lower ranking females joining their mothers at kills from a very young age, and that's to substitute their milk diet with meat at kills. Have a look, that youngster very brazenly has decided to go into that entrance of the den. It's not necessarily the case that all the tunnels inside this particular den site join up with one another. In actual fact, I'd even go as far as to say that they probably don't. But baby hyena will quite often excavate their own tunnels in the mound and will use them as bolt holes just in case predators like lion and leopard or other hyena come and try and prey on them. It's a Tamboti tree. Perry's asked a nice question. How old are hyenas when they start to anal paste? And Perry, up until very recently, I wasn't actually able to answer that question from you, but I'm going to now because I've seen cubs younger than this anal paste. And for those of you who don't know what anal pasting is, hyenas have a very elaborate olfactory scent marking organelle in their bodies. They use glands in their rectum to paste grass and sticks all over the place that tell a variety of different things. And you'd expect this just to happen from hyena that are wandering already or nomadic already. But I've seen hyenas all around the den, younger than this, start anal pasting. And I think that they do it from as early as what they can. I think the glands only really become really active when they are adults. Similar to any mammal, I think your glands only really start to come into being when you're in your adolescence. Or teenagers, I should say. And then from then on in, it uses, but the actions are nonetheless practiced by these youngsters. Now, because they've Connor, who's a new viewer, hi Connor, has obviously been looking at those hyenas and looking at their muscles and thinking, how fast can a hyena run? Now Connor, they have been clocked at 60 kilometers an hour. I suppose that's probably around about 45 mile an hour, I think. But 60 kilometers an hour is what hyenas have been clocked at, and they can maintain that 60 kilometers an hour for incredible distances. Easily able to outrun a cheetah at the same speed. So what I'm saying there is if a hyena and a cheetah had to run at 60 kilometers an hour, the hyena would easily outrun the cheetah. Can you believe that? They've got the perfect body design for endurance running. Tall in the shoulder and sloped rear end is specifically designed for endurance athletes. If you have a look at some of the top endurance and speed runners in the antelope world, you'll find that they've got a very similar body structure. Tall at the shoulder, sloped back, short legs. Animals like your pronghorn deer in North American pronghorn, the South African blesbuck, tsessebe, the fastest antelope that we possess on our continent, the tsessebe, hartebeest, are all animals that have this very distinctive shoulders high, sloped back end of the endurance athlete. Now you're noticing that this little hyena cub has now stripped some bark off of Tambuti, which is definitely going to give it a runny tummy. Tambuti bark is poisonous. That's why you're seeing him not eating. But you might be wondering to yourself, what is this little cub doing? And basically, because hyenas have got such massive muscles needed on their head to crush through the carcasses that they do, they pretty much start exercising their jaw muscles from as early as they can. And in an effort to develop those muscles as strong as what they can, hyena puppies, or cubs as they are known, are prolific chewers of everything around den sites. They will chew anything. And as they get more and more comfortable with the vehicles around their den sites, we have to dissuade them from chewing our tires off. You'll notice from time to time, if you wash often, we'll click our fingers or clap our hands or tap the car lightly to dissuade cubs wanting to come and chew our cars. Now there he's got some stick there. I don't know if he's got there. He had it in his mouth. I thought he actually may have had a bit of it stuck in the fur. Having a big game. What's quite interesting is that the D1 and D2 cubs haven't even showed their faces outside of this particular den. I wonder why. And obviously Jerry is feeding some information into my knowledge base that I have over here, which is very much lacking. D1 and D2 haven't come out because Pretty is not their mother, which would answer much. So although there were cubs of many different ages sharing the same hole, because their mother is not here, they haven't come out, which would answer the question. Whereas Pretty and this little cub are related, and that is why. Have a look at that. Now you're watching this little one suckling on some milk. Hyenas produce a very fatty milk, not quite as fatty as the aquatic animals, and they will suckle for up to 2 years, which is double and then some longer than what lions will suckle their babies for. Lions stop suckling their babies, or their cubs are weaned at about 9 months. Hyena babies are weaned at 2 years. They make fantastic mothers. I don't know what's going to happen here. And telling me that these hyenas are going to suckle off of the same mother. That is incredible. The first time I'm seeing this ever in my life. And dear Volt, if you're still watching from Secunda, that was a clear indication of another quite interesting trait to tell male from female, is the presence of those sometimes quite overdeveloped nipples. Males have nipples as well, of course, but not nearly as developed as what you saw there. After that little display there, that could just be clan mates busy greeting one another. Obviously they're cubs at both, and they've both got cubs hanging around. They're joining one another, and to maintain bonds with one another, that's what they do. So there's very elaborate greetings that happen between the hyena, and obviously what you just saw there now is not really a greeting. I mean, they know that they're there, but these interactions are very important for hyena. And they maintain their clan connections that way. And clans can number in the hundreds of hyena. In Kenya and places like Tanzania, I've seen clans numbering 150, 160 individual hyenas in one clan. In the Sabi Sands, how many individuals in any one clan? I think only one man will be able to answer that. I really wouldn't be able to tell you right now what the Sabi Sand average clan numbers are. I don't think anyone really knows, barring perhaps Kim Voliter. But definitely not 150 individuals. You don't see clans of that size here. Well, there we go. Mom's gone back into almost the exact position she was in when we stopped here. And while they reset for another bout of activity, we're going to send you through to Jamie, who's got some zebra for you.
I was feeling left out again, so I found some zebra to show you. A wonderfully beautiful herd. Some very large bellies. And one walking on the left is a stallion. That thin stripe between, I was going to say the thin stripe between the cheeks of his bottom gives it away. Can sometimes be quite tricky to tell with zebras, although he's made it easy for us this time around. And a little sub-adult wandering through as well. There goes a very pregnant lady. We seem to be seeing lots of pregnancies at the moment. And they're always particularly striking at this time of the evening. There's something so beautiful about their colors as the sun starts to set. You can see the wind's picking up. I think that's put them on alert ever so slightly. And see if we can get a nice view of them. Unfortunately for Steph, who asked the question about the buffalo tail, I haven't managed to find another buffalo, strangely enough, to actually be able to confirm whether or not it has a shorter tail than average. Oh, it's nice to hear apparently Steph has decided that buffalo tail wasn't actually shorter. Every now and again, you might catch the back tips of the ears, at the back of the ears of the zebras. And like all animals, their ears are absolutely vital in their visual communication and the social cues. Oh, my word. That looks uncomfortable. And I'm sure many of you who are familiar with horses will know how clearly the ears give an indication of the animal's mood. And I just noticed a couple of them laying their ears flat back a little bit earlier. And there might be a bit of conflict within this herd. Hello, girl. You're looking at us. Okay. That zebra looks about like if you poked her in the belly, she'd pop. And they've been having a mud bath, or at least a dust bath. She's covered in dirt, not really black and white so much as black, white and brown. Oh, we can see the bulge there. In fact, you can almost see an angle. If we catch her it facing in the right direction, you can almost see the sort of the hocks and the elbows of that baby. And she's bulging far more on the right than she was on the left. And this stallion has done well for himself. He's got a nice number of mares. A nice number of pregnant mares as well. And for those babies born, if they're females, they will spend up until they reach puberty with this herd. And then if there is ever a fight between the stallion and another stallion looking to gain members for his own starting herd, then he will, the father loses, he will hand over one of his fillies, so one of his daughters, and thus becomes a whole new generation and herd of zebras. The young males have to make it on their own. They quite often form bachelor groups until they are a little bit older and capable of tackling another stallion and fighting for their first females. It is one of those really interesting social systems. It's actually not one, I can't think of any other animal that follows that social structure, at least in this particular area. Our zebras are moving off into the bush, but unfortunately Steph needs to leave the hyena den, so we're going to head back over there so you can say goodbye to them, and then we'll be back here shortly.
All right, and from zebra onto these hyena, and they're looking like they're getting entrenched in for the night. We just wanted to show you the last little bit of greeting action from this youngster as we move off. We've got this bank of cloud moving in, and like I said, I didn't want to jinx us too much by speaking about the unspeakable at the moment that we are waiting for with bated breath, and we're in all likelihood going to have to move off and prepare ourselves for a light downpour soon. And before we lost visual, or before we lost too much light, I wanted to bring you back one more time so that we could just say goodbye before we move off. And definitely on that note, as you watch this youngster going by, we are going to be moving off from the hyena quite soon, and we're going to send you back through to Jamie so that you can finish off your zebra sighting, and hopefully we'll find you something else just as interesting in a little bit.
Left my zebra. I just want to do litter patrol. Sorry, bear with me one moment. These main access roads, sometimes vehicles come through and they sometimes accidentally have bits of plastic or building material that flies off the back of their trucks. So I just wanted to collect it. I always make sure if we ever come past and we ever see something like that in the bush, you just remove it to prevent any poor hapless animal from acquiring that piece of litter. One particular instance, where I was called into a reserve. The rhino had managed to wrap itself around a reel of cotton wire, not cotton wire, that does not exist, copper wire. It actually wrapped itself around the rhino's legs and around its body. She was fine, but obviously that was going to seriously cause her damage in the future. Luckily we caught it really quickly and were able to dart her and remove it. And I've told that story before. What was so interesting about it was the fact that her brother, she was associating with him, she was always sort of together with him, her older brother. He was about 7, she was about 4, so she just left her mother because her mother had had a new calf. And once we darted her and everyone jumped off the vehicles to run and go and help her and get her eyes covered and her ears covered during that whole process, he actually came back to try and rescue her, and he charged us. It was one of my most groundbreaking moments to realize the level of bonds between the different animals, and that family bond between a brother and sister, which up until that point I had no idea was so strong. And as we leave our striped horses, our painted zebras, our horses and donkeys in pajamas, whatever you want to refer to them as, we've had the usual question, which is, are zebras white with black stripes or black with white stripes? So Shanae, Shanae who's watching in Secunda, they're definitely white with black stripes, in my opinion, and occasionally brown with black stripes because they've been rolling in the dirt. And I keep referring to them as painted horses, but they are of course not horses. They're related to them, but you definitely can't ride them. I know there's lots of popular stories about people riding zebras in races and so on. And very, very often people come to Africa for their first time and ask whether or not they could ride the zebra. The answer is no, definitely not. Their backs are not built and structured in the same way that our domestic horses are. Question coming through. So Mike, who's watching in Florida, Mike would like to know, of all my years in the bush, what has been the funniest sighting I've ever had where I can't stop laughing? And Mike, I have to think about that for a moment, and bear with me, you might lose me through this dip. We're just going through a bad signal patch. I'm going to race through it. Too fast. Lost my hat. Here we go. Should be okay. Sorry about that, just had to go quiet for a moment. So Mike, my funniest moment in the bush, my funniest sighting. I have to say that time spent with James Hendry has greatly supplemented those hilarious moments, and in fact the entire Wild Earth crew we've had some really, really good laughs together. I'm trying to think of my favorite sighting. One that comes to mind always, and it wasn't actually a sighting, it concerned another person that I was working with. This is when I was in the Kalahari years and years ago. It was about 7 years ago now. And we were out fixing water pumps and water troughs. I can't even remember what we were doing, but we had to feed a hose from one side of a wall to another. It was quite a long way round, and the guy that I was busy doing these repairs with decided he was going to jump over the wall rather than have to walk around it. And I just have this really clear memory painted in my head, like a video moment. I wished I'd had a camera, where he jumped up and he grabbed the top of the wall and his face appeared and the bricks just crumbled and he went over backwards. And it was just the expression on his face and the colourful phrases that came out of his mouth in response to that, which definitely don't bear repeating in a family-friendly context, that really stick out in my memory, and I laugh every time I think about it. In terms of funny animal sightings, hyenas are always hugely entertaining. Sitting at those dens provides moments of gold as they start to learn. What else has been really funny? That I've laughed until I can't stop laughing. Very funny moments with my puppy as she was growing up and learning a little bit about the bush. And baby elephants. Baby elephants are always provide entertainment, and sometimes they slip and they fall down and they look so terribly embarrassed. There's also one really memorable time when I started working here, when I did one of my first live drives. And we were having audio issues at the time, but we were with a herd of buffalo. And something spooked them. And at the time there was a big group of them standing standing grazing around a termite mound. And they didn't realize that there was a termite mound there, the ones that were running from behind, and they all sort of bottlenecked and ran into each other, and I got the giggles. It wasn't even that funny a moment, but I got the giggles on air, and I couldn't stop laughing. And it's one of those painful, we were discussing it after James's mongoose story, those painful moments when you know you shouldn't be laughing, you really shouldn't, and you just can't stop. You giggle on and on. I know, Brian, if you have any really funny moments. I know James is always hugely entertaining. So one moment, it wasn't even my sighting, but I happened to be in final control the day that Scott drove into the marula tree. And I promise you, we watched that over and over and over again afterwards. Scott was really slowly, for those of you who missed it, he was really slowly sort of driving through the bush. He was trying to find a bird that he'd seen and that had flown off, which of course we all sympathize with. And he was so busy looking up into the air that he just very slowly slid forward and bopped into a marula tree. And his face was priceless. And I just happened, I'm not often in FC, but I just happened to be in final control for that particular moment. And Nikki, his girlfriend, was there as well. I think she was directing the show. I'm not sure how much directing happened after that for a very long time. A good 20 minutes as we rolled about giggling on the floor. Absolutely hilarious. I'm sure some of the viewers remember the moment that I'm talking about. And also just watching, because of course we constantly review our performance and we're always trying to bring you the best possible live safari experience. And we've had moments that we all sympathize with, where you can feel your train of thought. It's like a train accident. You see it coming and you watch as your train of thought just goes chuk, 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 and off the rails and gone. You cannot remember what you're talking about, or you can't get the sentence out that you're talking about. I think live safaris provide for some of the most incredible comic possibilities. What are you shouting at, Go Away Bird? Nothing. Just arriving at Buffelshoek Dam. Let's just stop and listen quietly for a moment. I know it's really difficult to sit and look at Buffelshoek. No, there's some greenery making its way through now. Not really what we want to be seeing. This is a favourite haunt of Mvula. You can hear the quack sounds of the go-away birds. I can see them actually. They're on the tree, they're on a knobthorn opposite us. There they are, sitting up there. Doesn't sound frantic enough though. Arrow-marked babblers I spoke about earlier. Let's go look around there just in case. See if maybe Mvula's made an appearance. I don't think anybody's seen him for a little while. Let's go find out. I could be wrong about that. But I don't think he's been called in, certainly on the Game Drive channel, for quite a long time. Difficult drought conditions. It's always hard for us to watch the goings on. And Safari Dean has asked whether we could ever supplement feed the animals if we had to. Bear with me, I'm going to answer that question on the other side of the dip. I've learned from experience sometimes that answering questions as you're going through a drainage line like that usually results in having to repeat what you said. Sometimes it just affects the signal ever so slightly. So Safari Dean, that's a really difficult, complex question. The answer is generally no, we wouldn't. First of all, there are just too many animals out here for us to even begin to provide enough food. We're trying our best, or Djuma and the landowners are trying their best in terms of supplying water, but even that has to come from somewhere. And actually providing enough in the way of supplement feeding, for example, something like lucerne, becomes a huge financial drain. And not just a financial drain, it's interfering at the point that would not be really acceptable in terms of interfering. This drought is a natural process as far as we can tell. So no. And the biggest reason, one of the biggest reasons for not doing it, and I have been in areas where animals have been supplement fed, slightly smaller reserves where they can't move. Bear in mind that within this area they've got close on 3 million hectares in which to move about. They can actually move to areas with better food that have had higher rainfall areas, which we could well see happen. But I have been on smaller reserves where the animals it's a closed system, so they can't migrate or move about to have better access to resources. And the biggest problem is that the first animal to appear is the rhino. They're the first ones to start, and they will spend as much time as possible around those feeding areas. And what that means is you're making the poaching problem worse, essentially. You are creating easier targets. You're making it easier for poachers to locate the rhino. It's a really difficult one. If we had a smaller area, it would be slightly easier to control, but out here it would be next to impossible. So no, we won't be supplement feeding in any way, unfortunately. It's always a highly complex question. Our natural instinct is to try and help and do our best. And probably the best way we can do that is to continue with raising awareness about conservation issues. Unfortunately, there's no remedy for the drought. We cannot make it better, we cannot fix it. The animals are just going to have to ride out the storm with the rest of us. Complex question on the subject of not necessarily interference, but certainly impacting on the animals. And Jabba the Hutt, you were wondering whether microchipping would not be considered in order to monitor the animals more closely or for research purposes. In certain areas, yes, it does actually occur. The most common, again, going back to the subject, would be to microchip rhino horns. That happens on a fairly regular basis in areas, in reserves throughout South Africa. It's a way of both keeping track of the animal and, if worse comes to worse, that animal is poached, being able to link the horn back to the area that it came from. For the rest of the animals, no. It depends on where you are. In this particular area, it's not all that common, but we do see it. You occasionally see elephants with radio collars. I've seen buffalo here with collars. It's not microchips because it's quite an expensive process to implant a microchip, whereas a radio collar is a useful way of monitoring with very limited impact on the animal. Bear in mind that anything like that gives off some kind of GPS signal. Oh, what about this tree? I'll have to come back with a panga at some point and just break that last little bit down. I do it now, but it's a bush willow. Bush willows are hard. Difficult, it's very solid wood, so it'd be taking it a little bit too long. Where was I? Oh yes, bear in mind that anything that gives off something like a GPS signal goes through batteries, inevitably, and there are improvements of technology to make that battery life last much longer. But that being said, you still have to dart and capture the animal and anesthetize the animal in order to change those batteries on a fairly regular basis. So it is a little bit intrusive. It's something that research teams do, and the research that they get is incredibly valuable. And we learn a great deal from it, and it can then be used to benefit conservation as a whole. But for the most part, it's not something that's necessarily done around here. There are organizations that do it though. And in my opinion, the impact on the animal is small enough that it's actually, the benefits far outweigh the negatives. Hello, Waterbuck. I see you. What a beautiful waterbuck male, framing the impala for us really nicely. Thank you, Waterbuck. You are beautiful. Nice big bull, settling down for the evening. Just to finish off the discussion on microchipping and collaring, Paul, you were wondering whether the process of darting a leopard and then collaring it or chipping it, whether that would negatively affect its response to vehicles. We're about to have a vehicle just pass by us. Sorry guys, we are right near a main access road. Just have a look at the sky for a moment and the clouds. There we go. Well done, thank you, Brian. There's our waterbuck bull. Just to finish off that discussion, Paul, yes, for a while, that animal is going to be a little bit skittish if it is darted from a vehicle. Animals distinguish between different types of vehicles. They distinguish between different brands of vehicles, they distinguish between different sizes of vehicles, and they distinguish between open and closed vehicles. So what you could do in order to prevent that is use a vehicle that is not regularly used for game drives and is a different color, and that will minimize the extent to which the animal then reacts to that vehicle. I've been on multiple animal dartings before and returned to monitor the animals afterwards, and they're absolutely fine with our presence. So yes, it might be a little bit more skittish after that, but they do recover nicely. And that's usually something that, with plenty of patience, can be undone. The negative effects can be undone fairly quickly, and the animal's confidence regained. I'm very glad that that vehicle didn't startle the waterbuck. He's sitting, although I think these particular waterbuck live around Buffelshoek boundary, so they're very used to vehicles coming and going. I'm just watching now that impala framed between the waterbuck's horns. She's stopped looking at us now. She was keeping a very close eye on us. Never fails to amaze me the vast array of different antelope species and the way that they've evolved out here. So many different shapes and forms. And the waterbuck is one of the biggest, actually, that we get, at least in this area, or that we see regularly. Close in size and weight to a kudu. Probably actually possibly outweighs most kudu, but is not taller than them. And that striking bright white ring. Hello, boy. You are beautiful. And apparently there's a lottery going on in the States. Well, good luck to any of you that have entered it. We wish you all the best. I certainly feel as though I've been fortunate enough to win a lottery of my own in the life that I get to lead, and the places that I get to see, and the wonders that I get to see and experience. Don't you agree, Brian? I think we won life's lottery in its own way. And I'm grateful every day for the opportunity to be out here and do this job. And that little white spot that you can see next to his eye, those are where his preorbital glands are. Very, very strong scent glands. In almost all of the antelope species have those glands around the eyes, the inside corners. And they get raw spots there from where they've rubbed their eyes on various branches and trees. Actually, loads of waterbuck, now that I've seen. It's that big bachelor herd that we sometimes see coming, or we used to see coming down to Buffelshoek Dam. Trying to get rid of a fly on his ear there. At least with this drop in temperature, we've at least seen a drop in the flies that were tormenting us in previous days. I was asked this morning whether animals behave differently if they feel the rain coming. And I wish I knew the answer to that, because I'm starting to feel that light breath of wind, that maybe I might have been wrong. Maybe we might just get some drizzle tonight. I wish I could ask the animals, though, or observe it from their behavior, and maybe get an idea as to whether or not to get my hopes up. It's so hard to reconcile this time of year and the seasons, the way that I've experienced the last 3 or 4 years in this area, with reliable rain and storms rolling in at the end of every day. It feels like going through a second winter, except hot, if that makes sense. This dryness and the color of the bush. Feels very out of place. Oh, up he gets. As our waterbuck very kindly walks away. Paul Rizzo, why would an animal evolve with a bullseye on its backside out in the jungle or in the wilds of Africa? Paul, nobody really knows, to be honest. A lot of people have put forward the follow me idea, so that when they do run away from predators, it attracts the attention of the rest of the waterbuck and allows them to stay together as a group. I don't buy that. Maybe the best explanation is the story of the animals wandering onto Noah's Ark, and the fact that they had to have a sort of a toilet schedule because there were so many of them wandering around the ark, but they had to have sort of set times. And the story goes that the poor waterbuck was unlucky and had to go in after the baboons, and the baboons had painted all of the toilet seats with white paint. And as a result, the waterbuck has had a white ring around its bottom ever since. And supposedly the hyenas haven't stopped laughing about it either. We can add Rich's bird as well, the cackling woodhoopers, to the collection of animals that are still laughing at the poor waterbuck's absolute misfortune in life. You know that you do get waterbuck in certain areas of Africa with completely white. Rather than it just being a ring, it is a white circle. It's a sort of a subspecies almost of waterbuck. Also one of the animals I would love to see. I've never seen it. I've only ever seen pictures of them. But maybe one day I'll get to see them. I think it's sort of around Zambia that you get the waterbuck with the complete white bottoms. lovely though that there are still mysteries out there that we have yet to solve, yet to have figured out. It's one of the things that I love the most about living out here. No matter how much I learn and experience, there will always be more. There will always be surprises around every corner and sightings that make me laugh until I can't stop. Tears roll down my cheeks. I'm laughing so hard. Really special moments that you get to spend with unique people, all brought together by the love of the place that they work in. Watching in Virginia Beach, you wanted to know, because it's summertime here, what the biggest festivals are that are celebrated by the local tribes. And Eric, at this particular time of year, I have to be honest, my knowledge is maybe not as it should be as to what festivals are going on. I know that the reed dance, so the point at which in the Zulu culture the maidens from the village are brought forward to the king, that occurs at some point fairly soon around here. I can't remember specifically exactly when, but that is one of the big ceremonies. The interesting thing about particularly South African local culture is that the local cultures have kind of enmeshed with different and westernized religions as well. So in the next few months, the Zionists will be embarking on their pilgrimage towards Polokwane, which is the capital city of Limpopo. And that's usually around Easter, so not quite summertime, but around Easter. I'm trying to think of any other festivals. As a South African culture, we don't tend to celebrate the sort of middle of summer, to the best of my knowledge. There's no real summer solstice celebrations except within very niche communities where they might celebrate it. Can't think of any others, Eric, off the top of my head. I could stand corrected. There might be others, but I certainly can't think of any around here. The wonderful thing about South Africa, of course, is its level of multiculturalism. And with as many as 12, actually, officially, 12 official languages, there's such a wide variety of cultures and languages. It's one of my favorite things about living out here. But I can't think of anything specifically summer related. Not in the same way as occurs elsewhere in the Western world. I know that one of my favorite experiences was being taught by a couple of Swedish guests all about the summer ceremony and a song about a frog. And somewhere I've got it written down in Swedish, and the way that they sing that frog song around the longest day of the year. I cannot remember the words now, but something about a frog hopping up and down. If we have any Swedish viewers, you will know what I'm talking about. Hugely entertaining. Just going to disentangle my spotlight briefly, which is very much wrapped around me. Sorry everyone, here we go. Right at the cusp of that point that you can't quite decide whether or not the spotlight is making your life easier or not. Of course, looking for the reflections of various eyes out here. Here's an animal that I would love to see on our live safaris. Mia, my cat. You were wondering if we have any ostriches out here. And Mia, the answer is yes, we do. We don't see them all that often. Oh, another bad signal patch. Hold on, guys. Ostriches out here. We do get them within the greater Kruger area. We don't see them all that much, and I wonder if I could ask any of the regular viewers who've been, and some viewers have been watching for years, whether or not you've ever seen an ostrich on a live safari. I think I remember somebody mentioning it happened once.
I saw it once.
You saw it once, Brian? Oh, there we go. Thank you, Brian. When was that? Early. Was it in summer?
Yeah, it was
November 2014. Okay, so just over a year ago, Brian remembers catching an ostrich on our live safaris. Capturing on camera. And that's generally because Mia, they prefer the slightly more open and grassy areas. And I suspect that you probably see them occasionally on Torchwood along the Kruger National Park boundary, which is where they have the nice big gabbro soils and clearings of grassland. I suspect you would see them around there. I have seen ostriches fairly regularly on visits to Kruger, so they could wander in here at any time. But that would definitely be an exciting moment. An animal that I've had a couple of very close encounters with. They're usually creatures that get domesticated very easily, or at least habituated to people. And there's quite a few South African lodges and vacation spots where you will encounter ostriches wandering around. I remember being absolutely terrified of them as a child. Of course, that fear is long gone, but it was fairly well founded. They can actually be quite dangerous creatures in their own way. Very powerful kicks. It's much like the cheetah as well. They also like these nice open areas. Well, ladies and gentlemen, for me it has been a quiet afternoon, but still wonderful to be out here. It's a beautiful evening, coming with all of the African smells that we have. So big thanks to Brian for all of his wonderful camera work and for his entertaining company, and thank you to all of you for your interaction and your questions that make these live safaris such fun. I'm going to send you over to Steph for the last few moments, who, to continue the theme of the evening, has elephants for you.
Station Alpha after Puzo in the update.
And what a wonderful way to finish off this afternoon safari. Nothing better than a beautiful view and a herd of elephant. Dry, dusty bush, dark, bruised sky, and obviously the quintessential animal for me, the animal that represents all the savagery and all the tragedy that is the African continent, and that would be the African elephant for me. And it definitely has been a day of elephants for myself. I don't think I've done more than 2 kilometers today in total. Elephants and a hyena. It's been a fantastic afternoon with a little bit of zebra and kudu thrown in and waterbuck thrown in for you. But I must be honest, it's been a real special day. I have to thank Tebs for his camera work today, and for the 2 ladies in final control, to Jerry in D1 and Kirsty in D2, thank you very much. And of course, thank you to all of you for asking all the questions that you have. I'm going to bid you a good night, and we will see each other for the morning safari tomorrow, the sunrise safari. I bid you farewell.